Well, I just spent all day driving to Laredo and I bought a 2001 convertible Firebird. Pretty excited. The previous owner had some issues with it. It's leaking coolant, needs brakes, and it's leaking water into the convertible top, but this should be a fun little project. Here's some of the things to look for if you're gonna pick up a 4th gen Camaro or Firebird. Let's take a look under the hood. This does have a 3.8 liter Series 2 3800. I'm on the fence about leaving this in here and supercharging it, which I think it would be really fun, or putting a 6 liter V8 in it. Now when I first picked this up, the previous owner told me that he thought the head gasket was out, and that was something I was prepared to be fine with. I was going to take the motor out anyway, but after working on it I realized it was just dumping fluid out of this coolant bypass elbow right here. Now the factory ones are plastic and those crack and break. There's tons of videos online about those. This one wasn't too hard to replace, but there's another one up under the motor in the center in there, and that one was dumping. I actually got it all the way back together, and I put some silicone on it under the advice of someone on another video, which was a terrible mistake because those O-rings, they need to expand, and that silicone did not allow it to expand, so therefore it ended up leaking again. I had to take it all back apart, put it all back together. I did flush the radiator multiple times. I changed the radiator cap, the thermostat. When I first took this apart, there was no thermostat in it, which was kind of laughable. That usually happens when somebody overheats it, or somebody telling their friend, hey, you're in a hot state, you don't need that anymore, just go ahead and take it out, it'll run cooler, which is not a good idea. I am throwing multiple check engine light codes for your evap, so I don't know if there's a hose loose, something's wrong with the evap, or something in the back. I mean, there's a few places it'll be, so I'm gonna run down some of the check engine lights and go over those in different videos if you've got issues. The PCV valve was acting weird, so I'm gonna take this out and replace it. This is very easy, it's about $10. The only part that's hard is finding a gasket for this. Is kind of a pain. You either have to order it or make one out of another gasket. We'll see what we're gonna do with that, but it's not really running very well right now. I'm gonna make a few videos on getting it running and just sort of the journey with this. So if you've got a Firebird or Camaro and you'd like to watch along or get some tips or even just be entertained, I love watching those videos, so I thought I would make some as well. A few other things I noticed is the pulleys aren't in terrible shape. They do have a little bit of rust. This one's got a little bit of stuff on it. This pulley isn't great. It looks like it's off center. I've taken this belt off a couple of times and put it back. I need to replace the belt because you can just see it's worn, but I may end up replacing some of these pulleys as well. Now what I did notice when I got underneath it, it is covered in mud. I think what happened, and I'm not really sure, but I got underneath it. I think what happened is the previous owner was like, I'm done with this car. They took it out and they went mudding. They spun it around, spun the tires, had their fun with it. I got underneath it, it is completely covered with mud inside. It's probably hard to see, but there's just mud everywhere and I couldn't figure out, I thought it was rust. Initially I was like, man, this car's full of rust, I don't want it. And eventually I realized that it's just got a bunch of dirt in it. So I was like, oh, well, I can wash that, not a big deal. I'll clean it up, we'll see what we can do with it. I changed the oil, put a different filter in it. I checked the oil in it. There's no metal shavings, new filter, new air filter. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the snorkel off and remove this. I'm going to do a straight pipe and bypass and modify the intake, and I'm debating on putting a supercharger on here, but I'm not sure yet. We'll see. I haven't had it that long, but this is going to be a long fun project. So now looking in the trunk, it did come with everything. This spare tire needs to go over here. This carpet is all out. I checked everything out. The motor works to the radio. I just need to put it back together. The carpet is kind of gross. I need to either clean it. I'm probably just going to replace it. Everything's good on this side, and the motor to the convertible top does work great. So I've got some coolant in there. I found this hanging around the exhaust pipe, just rattling. I couldn't figure out what this metal noise was when I was driving around, and I realized this was just flopping around the exhaust. So I've got some things to look at in there. The exhaust is pretty clean. It actually sounds really nice. But I'm going to end up taking that off and seeing what we're going to change with it, whether we're going to wire it out still or do straight duals. This is kind of disappointing, so I started cleaning this, but man, it has a ton of mold on it. This, again, it sat open for a little bit and got some rain. I pulled the carpet and checked the plugs, but this is really gross. I'm going through the process of cleaning this right now. I did take some chemicals and really wiped this down really well. and I need to go down here. I need to just hit this whole thing, but there isn't a ton of mold in the car on the sides. I am going to take all the carpet out. I cleaned a lot of stuff over here. The main thing is I took it out and checked the drain plugs to make sure that there wasn't a lot of rust around the bottom. Luckily, there's just some discoloration around the plugs, but it doesn't look too bad. It's nothing rotting away the bottom or anything like that. It's all very superficial. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten the car at all. So, pretty clean up here. The seats lay back. I did have the top down a little while ago. This mirror's on here, but it looks like somebody sat on it or bumped it. There's a little piece of plastic broken in here. Now the mirror functions correctly, and even the motors work. I got those working again, because when I first got it, the dash didn't work, none of the lights worked, everything was off, but I did get that turned back on and functional. What I did do when I was taking the dash apart, this is so brittle from sitting in the sun, I was trying to pry, and I used the back of my knuckle right here, and I braced my knuckle right on here to turn, and I pushed my finger right through the dashboard. I want to kick myself because this thing was flawless, and I did this on my own just by barely pushing it to lift this thing out. So be very careful. We all know that these dashboards are not built for the sun. I'm going to get a dash cover for it so it'll be a lot stronger and last, but this is new. This is going to end up getting replaced, but these are super fragile. It did come with the monsoon radio. It had the upgraded one. The speakers work. This thing, I pulled the fuse on it because the dash was shorting out. I couldn't get the tach to work and the speedometer to work at all until I finally figured out that this is what was shorting it out. So now that it's working, it's fine. I just haven't put the fuse back in, but this is definitely going to come out. I'm going to put a screen in here with Android radio or iOS connections for depending on who's in here. This little thing is broke. The convertible top does work, but the plastic clip that holds this in is off. So again, another $5 part, 10 minutes of my life, but it's super annoying just because it sticks out like that. It's really ugly. But I'm gonna clean this up. It'll look pretty nice. We're gonna get one of these in. We're gonna swap it out. The motor for the driver's side seat does not work. I pulled it up. I'm gonna have to pull the seat out. It looks like when it did get wet, it shorted out the little cables. There's an orange and a green wire down there. I think it's a hot and a neutral. I'll have to look at the schematic, but one of those is either pulled out or not working, but this doesn't, which really sucks because I'm 6'1", and when I go to get in this thing, it's sort of half up for somebody built, 5'5" or so, and I'm just way too close. So that's been pretty uncomfortable, but that's on the list. I'll put this stuff back together. The horn doesn't work. I'm gonna end up having to take this apart. I'm willing to bet, as always, that the clock spring is probably broken there. It does honk when I turn the key to turn it on, so I know that the horn is functional, but this has got nothing. This is very common with these, and since it's sat in the sun for so many years, it's completely destroyed the top of the steering wheel. So this steering wheel is going to come off. I'm either going to get a replacement Pontiac one, or I'm going to put an aftermarket racing wheel. I kind of like it to keep it the same. I'm not a purist. I don't really care about keeping things factory or stock. I do want to make it my own, but I just don't know. I'd like it to look nice and sort of classy, but this has definitely got to go. These don't work, but I don't care. This isn't really going to matter to me. The first time I pushed this to try to use it, I broke it off with my finger. It snapped right off. That was super annoying. I put my thumb in there and it went blam. The other thing that happened is I put my finger over here to put the driver's side window down, and that button went snap. So this is telltale signs of a car that has been sitting for 10 years in a driveway just with the sun beating it up. These things do so much better when you drive them frequently instead of letting them sit. Thanks for stopping by. If you love these cars like I do, please come back and see me. If you have a Camaro, a Firebird, or even a Mustang and you just want to say something funny, leave some comments down below. If you've owned one of these cars and you have problems with it and you'd like to add something that I didn't mention or something maybe I should look for that I'm not really aware of right now, please let me know, and I'll leave some links in the description to some of the parts that I'm going to replace on here.